And Joe, just to let the listeners know, when did you start the St. Louis Police Department?
1960.
And then when did you start your homicide career?
In April of 1969.
And then you pretty much, to say you did the rest of your career in homicide would be almost correct?
Well, I had 27 years in homicide. Then I went to the 9th District in uniform for a year, and I finished out 7 years in the South Patrol Detective Bureau.
As after you retired from the St. Louis Police Department, what did you do after that?
I worked for about 7 years as a consultant or call-outs on missing persons for missing children with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And then in 05, I got a call from St. Louis, or 04 when I retired, the county police called me and said they were going to start a cold case unit. Would I be interested? They were applying for a grant. And I started there, and following in 05, I started at St. Louis County until this last November, or December rather, 2024.
I think one of the cases, and when we told people we were having you on, Joe, is a lot of people sent in suggestions about what they wanted to hear. And the number one thing they wanted to hear about was the national murder case, which 1987, and I believe you were one of the lead investigators, if I'm not mistaken on that, correct?
Correct. I just left my home. I was heading into work. We were working homicide, working from 11 till 7, and I could hear him on the air putting out descriptions, and we were called and just told to respond to the National Food Store on Natural Bridge, 4331 Natural Bridge. So when I got there and parked in front, Danny Nichols came out. He was parked, his car was in front of mine, and he was getting his tape measure and that out. He said it's brutal in there. He said it's really bad. So when we got in there, Steve Hobbs and that group, they were in an ETU. They were in the work area where the office was. So we just started interviewing people. There was 5 people killed in the store. There was Rose Brown, Michael Bohr, Michael Beam, and Kenneth Bass. And there was the store manager, Harold Meyer, and Richard Fortson. They were shot also. And we went to different hospitals. So they were processing the work area, so we started interviewing the workers in the store. They have stockers in there that would be, at nighttime, would be low. After the stores closed, they were restocking the shelves and that. It was their job. So later on, we wound up, the guard, David Spahn, he was taken to regional hospital. Harold Meyer went to Bethesda Hospital, and Richard Fortson, I think he went to Barnes. So so each were assigned. I was assigned to go talk to the store manager, and the other officers went. They had district detectives responded too. We had citywide. Everybody came in. So when I got down there to the hospital, and Harold was, his mom was there and his wife, and he had been shot twice, and he wouldn't take any medication. He wanted to be clear-headed. He was shot,
Wow.
shot in the chest, and he was shot in the hand. And so we started what time he went to work that day, and then he said what time he started. And it was a normal day. It was going to be a busy day. It was Labor Day weekend. And I found out later on that store on Natural Bridge was the busiest store in of all the national food stores. So he was saying that everything was fine all day, and that evening. So they closed at 10. So at 10 o'clock, They start shutting everything down. And the young man, the youngest one, Michael Moore, he was a bagger. He was 16 or 17 years old. He had to stay extra to wipe off the counters and everything. So by 11 o'clock, they were ready to go. Harold said he stood up and looked, and he seen they have a ring. They had a ring, and that all the keys were on the ring. So the guard would take the keys and go down and let them out the east door. And Harold sat down, and all the guys were going to leave. The people were going to leave. They were getting ready to go. All of a sudden, they walk to their door, and he opens the door, and there's a guy with a gun on him. Puts them all back in the room. Tells them if they make a move or do anything, he's going to kill them. You know.
Is that back in the office they took
In
him?
the office,
Okay.
in the office area. And it's not that real big in there, you know. So then they ask him to open the safe. Well, Harold, everybody's nervous and everything, and Harold, he tried, he couldn't get it open, so he told the lady, Rose Brown, to get it open. So she did. And he said, if you call anybody, I don't give a damn. I'll kill all of you. So when Harold couldn't get it open, he hit him in the head with the gun. So he's bleeding he's down on the floor. So they start taking me, and Harold tells Rose Brown, give him the trash bag. What they did, they had a lot of money orders. People would come in, pay their utility bills. So they throw all the carbon paper in that trash bag. There was a trash bag. When the guy's reaching in there and he's getting the money out of there, and so then after they get that done, they got everybody there. They have them come out of the office. When they come out of the office, there's some row of shelves, and there's somebody on the other side. So they make them go up to the counter. They got them all up by the counter. There's a counter there, and put them on the floor. When they put them on the floor, and they had to move forward all the way to your head's almost at the counter. And they were face down. Harold was on his side because there was no room for him to turn down. And he could feel the guy was right at his feet, and he's going through that bag, and then he says, kill them all.
How many perpetrators were there in the store at this time?
At that time, we saw there was two. Once they start shooting, one of the stalkers come up to the front, and he's looking. He can see a guy at the window, but there's a soda machine there. Like he must be a lookout or something. And then he looked west, and he could see two guys. He seen somebody bent over. So after they shot, and Harold said he saw, when he came out of the office, he saw that somebody had the guard's gun, and then the other guy, the guy that had the gun that he had was a piece of crap gun. It was an old Ivor Johnson or something. So after they're laying down, after they're on the floor, they're moaning and everything else. They tell the guard, we know you got more bullets, where they at? He didn't have a bullet pouch. He said, they're in my pocket. So he unloaded the gun and he put the bullets in there. And then he start walking down, and he click, click, bang. Go to the next one, bang. He went to the next one, which is Harold. Harold kind of moved his head like that, and he shot in the hand, and then he shot in the chest. And next thing he knows, they leave. So he's later, we wants to make sure they're gone. He goes in the office. He calls his wife, who lives up in North County. Tells him we've been shot. I call the police. So she hangs up. She calls 911 in the county. The county, she says who she is. My husband's the manager of the National Food Store on Natural Bridge. Well, there was a Natural Bridge store on Lucas and Hunting Natural Bridge, so they went there. The county did. Harold waits a little bit. He goes back, and he's still in there. He calls her again. He says, "Did you call the police? They're not here yet." And then they called again. But in the meantime, one of the guys who were stalkers, looks out the guy that saw the guy by the soda machines, he got up on the roof. He crawled, it was a ladder, and he got up on the roof, and he had the keys. By that time, the police were there. And then he threw the keys down to the officers so they could get in there.
Wow.
What a scene. Wow.
So, and that was like till, we were in there till I guess 2 or 3 hours, getting the statement, taking our time. So when we got back, it was about, I'd say 5:30, 6 o'clock, and everybody's there, the team's there. And so we're gonna start typing up what I got so the guys know what to work with. I said, oh, we got something came up. A guy called. He said he was up on Grand Avenue by the water tower, and he said he was there with those guys at the National Food Show when it happened. He's afraid it was his uncle and some other people, and they were going to kill him. So they go up and they find him. They bring him in. He starts telling the story that. He's standing outside with his uncle and 3 other guys, and all of a sudden, when the guard comes to come out, let the kid out, like Michael Moore out, to get his gun, and they all rush in, running, screaming, and did this and that. So when they get through with that, I said, "Wait a minute, that's not what the victim says." He said, he don't know what he's talking about. He got hit in the head. He's shot. Blah blah blah. So we got a problem. So then they said, they told two detectives to go out there. We got a picture of one guy. He had been arrested, and we had some fill-ins like you do. So he goes out there to the hospital, and he sees Harold Meyer. They show him the pictures, and he don't identify anybody. Then they start arguing with him.
Start arguing with the victim?
Yeah.
I think this is a good time for me to interject, and it's a good time for me to be quiet because it's a great story. But in this case, there was pressure in a big case of when 5 people were murdered, and also one of the victims happened to be a relative of a prominent politician. Correct?
Somehow, yeah. That's what I heard. Yeah.
Okay, but yeah. Now go ahead and.
Well, when like I say, when they went out there and they showed him the pictures, and he don't identify him, and they start arguing with him.
This was Harold Meyer, correct?
Yeah. So Harold calls me up. He says, "What the hell's going on?" Blah, blah, blah. There's 2 guys out there wearing these hats. And he's going on. I said, "Harold, let me tell you something right now." I said, we don't tell you, you tell us. That's the way it is. Okay, all right, okay. You just take it easy. We're working on this thing. So we were there. So we got the names of all these people from this kid that came in there. And they found they did say he had a record. He was arrested down North Broadway somewhere. They did a business robbery. They put the people on the floor. So it made sense, with everything else. They go, well, maybe that's them. So we're trying to get the stuff going with that, and do some background, get pictures where we can. And the other guys, we can't find nothing on them, no arrests or nothing like that. So then they decide they're gonna. The next day they get warrants and all that stuff. They hit the houses. They get this one guy. His name was Charles Wright, and he had a little all-head gun, so they got him, and they get the other. That's the only gun they got. In the meantime, while all this was going on, we called. There's a gun shop out on. He lived in North County. The guard, Mr. Spann. There was a place out there called Marshall's Gun Shop. They finally they were selling guns and this and that, and they shouldn't have been. Well, he bought this gun from them, so we had the serial number. We got it in NCIC right away. We had that got that covered. So the next day we bring they hit these different houses. We bring them in. And they're all in there all afternoon and everything else. And they all deny it, everything else, and the families and this and that. This kid that came forward, he said, they're going to kill me, I can't leave here. So they put him in the office, in a room, if you've been in the old homicide room down there.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the door open. And he said, I can't leave, they're going to kill me. So they kept him there all night, And he's over here and everything going on. The guy's talking and everything else. And somebody goes in there and he tells them a little bit, and somebody else goes in there and they take him over in the the TV section, they get a statement from him. Everybody's real happy we got these guys. And I told the captain, I said, Captain, these ain't the guys. Well, I'm pretty sure we got them. I said, how about we bet $10 on it? Well, we got the guys, blah, blah, blah. So then the next day, they decided to have a news conference.
Oh, boy.
And, because it's a big nationwide type thing, so they had the news conference and everything. And then the more they're talking to it, and they finally tell this kid that came forward and everything else, he's being charged. He's under arrest for murder and all this and that. Wait a minute, he said, I wasn't there. I was at the airport. He's a security guard.
What was your red flag, Joe, that you had the wrong guys?
Well, he was talking the way it happened. From what Harold says, and you got to go with what your people tell you. So the next day after that happened, we started trying to find some more things. This is one of these deals where it's really confusing. Everybody's running here, running there, and this and that.
Right.
What's taken? What was taken in the store? Well, when we find out, there was. It's going to be a busy weekend, so they had $7,500 in $1 bills, and they had these different bus passes. They had monthly bus passes and weekly bus passes. So we had numbers. We had all that. We didn't release any of this stuff. You couldn't. You know how that is. So then they did issue the warrants. The guy, we went out the airport. Captain told him about it. He says, go out the airport. We found everybody that saw him out there. So then it's starting to go the other way now, So, but they didn't have a choice. They had to issue the warrants with a case like this, even though. So then after about a week, it kind of went down the tubes. They had to release them all. And then from there, we're just following leads and what we have to do and everything. There was they recovered. We didn't get back in there. They processed it real good. What you got. There was an envelope was torn open, and they got a partial print off of it. It was a thumbprint, and it was 6 points. Which isn't enough to make you have to have more. You have to have about 7 or 8 to be positive on it. We only had 6. Well, we couldn't go back up there and look for it because they had National had people come in there and clean up everything, clean it all up. That was gone. Then we get a call from the FBI. They got the print eventually, and they got their examiner says he had 21 points on it.
Oh, wow.
And our guys go up the fingerprint up there. Joe Bull was up there. He was in charge of that. Everybody looked at it, all the fingerprint guys, all the experience they got, they still said 6 points. So every lead we get, we get the fingerprint classification, and we get the name, and you have the FBI number and the fingerprint, just for the world. It was a world. And every list we'd send up there, they'd compare them. Nope. So we never did identify that print.
Okay.
Can I ask you? I'm sorry, Joe. I was reading up on this, and you just mentioned it, the bus pass. Did that come in play at all?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's what I was.
Eventually.
Okay. I thought
This is an
so.
ongoing.
Wait for it, JJ.
I'm
Wait
sorry.
for it.
Sorry, I'm impatient, but I read that when I was
JJ's
reading
about
it.
to pull the bus over.
Yeah, we got. No, this was an ongoing. We're following this, and in the meantime, after all this was over, Tom Detmar, he was the U.S. Attorney's Office. He calls George Peach. He wants to send over an ATF agent that worked with Steve Chiraco and Engelman and some of this other stuff. Bill McGarvey. So Bill came over. So I was teamed up with Bill McGarvey, and then we were doing stuff. And then the other group, they were following up different leads. And none of this is on paper. You know how that goes. Everything is going.
Oh, I know how it goes.
Yeah. You know, eventually it's going to get there. But it took. I was reading that report. I should have brought it in. The original crime scene report wasn't made till October the 2nd.
And when did it happen?
September the 4th.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah.
And there were some other ones.
That's on par for Tom's.
That's on time for me.
So then, in November, we're in November now. November the 8th, we get a call. The homicide got a call from Brentwood Police. They had stopped the car for a traffic violation. When they opened the trunk, they're going to take a custodial search, and they find a gun in there. He had Smith & Wesson 38. He had rubberized handles, grips. When they took the grips off, they get the serial number. That's the guard's gun.
Wow.
You know, and then we got it. The lab identified it. Said, yeah, that's the gun. That's the other gun. Is the bullet. It was such an old gun. You know, you couldn't do anything with it. You know, you couldn't if you got the right gun, you couldn't do anything with it. So then we started who got the gun? You know, we know the guy from. We find out the guy named Jimmy Kennedy was an uncle of a guy named Donnie Blankenship. He got the gun from Donnie Blankenship. He bought it from him, and then we started working on that. And then Johnny had a brother, James, and James, Donnie. They went over to the house. James said he came over to the house. He had a bag, and when he gave him the bag, he had money. He had $3,000 in $1 bills, and he also had the guard's gun, and the uncle got the gun. So we know how it's coming with that.
Right.
Then we find out later on that they get arrested. They get stopped. They got Donnie and a guy named Marvin Jennings. They get stopped and jump out, and they find a gun in the car, different gun. It's not that. So we got two suspects right now. You know, we had some lineups eventually. No one they couldn't identify. Richard Fortson he was a diabetic, and his eyesight was terrible.
He was the other survivor, correct?
The other survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he got hit with that old gun, and the bullet rimmed his skull. You know,
Around the back?
Right, around the back. Yeah. You know, so. You know, we're still plugging away at this and plugging away, trying to figure out why did they come here? How did they get there? And then we get a call from, there was most of the porter they had cleaned up in that. They came from this company, it was on Brannan and Arsenal, called Building Butlers. And they do janitorial work. And the guy down at the play, an older man, he said, you know, did you know that Marvin Jennings worked in the National Food Store on National Bridge?
Oh.
Oh,
There you go.
He worked
not a
there.
clue.
He worked there a week before. He worked there on a Friday night. He was going to be the new man. One guy was leaving. He was going to be there and so he was there Friday night, watching everything. Wasn't doing too much work. And he don't
doing a
come,
lot of observation.
he don't come back the next night.
Well, didn't you guys know from the I believe in the very beginning there was an inside job?
Yeah.
Was that
Well,
kind of on your mind?
figured you just didn't know, you know.
Right.
There was one of the guards was off. He got sick, he had to go home. You're looking at that too, you know, and everything. So we know that puts him in there, and then some other things came up. There were guys were talking to some of their friends, and so when this Phil Harden was talking, you know, they weren't involved, but they overheard them talking. And there's the one guy, he had a girl. Marvin was a ladies' man. He had babies all over the place. And this one girl, he was telling her he really felt bad. They were drinking. He really felt bad. He killed that young boy. You know, don't worry about the other ones, but he did feel bad about that.
I did read where the young boy he tried a few times to get off early, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't let him get off
Yeah.
because it was busy.
Well, I was supposed to get off at 10, but
Okay.
Mr. Ford said after it happened, he blamed himself.
That's sad.
And I took him to the funeral home for Michael Moore, and he was in the he was a good young man. He was in the Naval ROTC at Cleveland.
Okay.
He was laid out in his uniform.
Oh, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
and that Moore, Richard was a real sensitive man. You know, he was crying and everything, and he played organs at different black churches.
Really?
He was really
Wow.
well known for that. Richard
Okay.
was, you know. But well, we kept plugging away, but and he could say he cried about blaming, Marvin did, and then supposedly after the murder, Marvin and Donnie, and Marvin had a brother named Myron. He was a security guard at Deaconess. They all went to New Orleans for a funeral. His uncle died down there. So they all drove that night after the murder. They borrowed Marvin's girlfriend's car. She had a Mercury Cougar, and drove to New Orleans. They went down there for a couple of days, and they came after the funeral. They came back. So Bill McGarvey and I, we went down there thinking maybe they spent some money or something.
So you got to go investigate?
They didn't. Yeah, we went down there though.
Yeah. I would have definitely tried to scam a trip to New Orleans out of any
You
investigation.
didn't go to a strip club and see a bunch of ones were used,
No,
did
we
you?
did. No. I could tell you a New Orleans story later. We're off to here, but it wasn't from this case.
But this was, and I believe it still is, the largest mass shooting in St. Louis.
We had one. There was one in the early '70s up in the 8th District on York Court. You know where that is up there on Marcus? There was they were a Cooley family, and there were some kids killed in the house. But it was a drug ripoff, you know.
And how many was that, if you remember?
There was some little kids in there. It was 4 or 5.
4 or 5, yeah. And I think I read somewhere when we were doing our background on this that it's still
Yeah,
as far as fatalities go.
yeah.
It's the largest mass shooting in St. Louis, and it was done with a security guard's gun. Is that what?
They had the 2 guns. They had 2 guns, but they only had bullets for the old gun. You know, whatever they had in there, they didn't know it was 5 or 6 shots, and that was it. And they had 10 shots with the guard's gun.
And I think one of the stories I heard, and I think it was producer John that told me, is that you have stayed in touch with
Harold,
and you still to this day.
every day,
Correct?
every year, anniversary.
No kidding. And he's like
Yeah.
70 right now, I think.
He went. After this. Well, I'll tell you what when we get kind of at the end of this thing, but. So we're looking at those guys, and then we're eventually going here, going there. We finally get a arrest warrant. Now they lived out in Henley Hills, on Utica. We had gone to going out there. We went out there to get in the house. There was McGarvey. There was a bunch from Homicide and everything. The doors were locked. We couldn't get in. We got a ladder and we were able to get in through the window. And we went in there, and there was like a family room, and then there was a bedroom there with two Donnie and his brother slept. They lived there. There's a wallet laying on the floor by the bed. So I pick it up and open it up, and there's Johnny's driver's license. So I pull it out, the driver's license out of the wallet, and there's a bus pass.
I knew that was coming.
So I had the numbers, and one of the numbers was the one taken, and so it came down to that, and then
He got all that money, he still wanted to not pay
Well,
for
that yeah,
one
and then
free bus ride.
and then they're going around. Donnie was trying to get a car fixed, and they were going a couple places, and he was paying him with dollar bills.
once. He was treating the whole area like the strippers. The whole neighborhood was treated like strippers for a
Yeah.
while with Donnie.
So how many shooters were there? How many went to jail for
I
this?
think I'm thinking there probably was 5. The lookouts or drivers, because they had 7,500, and when they came to his brother's house, James, they only had $3,000. So they had to, they divided it evenly. We know the one guy was the. We know the one guy was looking out the window.
Right, look up. So how many did they all go to jail? All 5 get convicted?
We don't know who the other. We only had
Oh, you
2.
do? Okay.
Never did get the others.
Okay.
But when the trial was going on, and they brought the family in there, and Marvin's sitting there, and he was cussing or when he walked by, and this Michael Moore's aunt, she was tough as nails. She said he called her something, boy, she's ready to come over.
There's furniture about to move up in the courtroom.
Yeah, but there was $45,000 they missed. I mean, Marvin should.
They missed 45,000.
Like he gets jolted.
So they missed the 45,000, huh?
So the 2 they're in jail,
Yeah.
and they still had come up for parole every once in a while.
Every time they've done this, have a hearing, Harold Meyer goes up there.
Good.
And
I think I read that somewhere.
Rose Brown's. Last time they're doing it on just a video.
Zoom
Yeah, video.
makes it
The
easy.
Brown family used to go up there too, but now it's getting all these years later. There was a organization, the International Homicide Investigators, and every year they'd have symposiums, and we had it down at Clearwater, Florida, and they called me and they wanted to know if we could. Harold Meyer would like to come, and so I called up Harold and he said, yeah, they paid their way
Good.
down there, and we were in Clearwater. It was a real nice hotel. They had somebody that didn't show up or was going to give a talk. So Harold got up there, and I was up there with him a little bit, and he told the whole story to all those guys,
Wow.
what they heard.
Damn.
And I say, here's all these homicide guys, and every one of them, he had a standing ovation.
Well, Harold's the one that steered you away from the original
Right.
arrest. He's the guy that you trusted to say,
That's not that.
this wasn't how it went down. Because he
No.
told me how it went down, and that's not how it went down.
No.
So that good for Harold. And Harold, if you're listening, shout out to you.
I'll
Well,
give him
say-
a buzz.